Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we're going to have a special katha in honor of Giriraj Govardhan, who we worship tomorrow on Govardhan Puja Day. So we'll begin with a few prayers. Gauragraganya ganagocha goloruharam Gauranga gudatama gopyada kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati singha gora Govinda deshi kavaram satatam namami. Hantaya madhura bala haridasavayo Yad Rama Krishna charana spadasa pramoda Manam janoti sahagogena yustayoryat Pani yasuya vasakanda kanda mulai. The Braj Bhakti Vilas of Srila Narayan Bhatta Goswami describes Govardhana Giri Tubhyam Gopanam Sarva Rakshakam Namaste Deva Rupaya Devanam Sukadayane. O Govardhan Hill, obeisances to you who act as a complete protector of cowherds, who manifests a godly form and who gives pleasure to the gods. In the Sadanamrita Chandrika by the famous Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddha Krishna Das Baba, he describes Saptaham evachuta hasta padmake Bringayamanam phalamula kandarai Samsevyamanam hadamatma brindakam Govardhanam tam siddhasanamami. I bow my head and offer obeisances to Giriraj Govardhan, who rested upon the lotus hand of Achyuta for 7 days like a bumblebee resides on a lotus. He expertly serves Hari and his dearest devotees by providing him with an abundance of varieties of fruits, roots, and caves. And there's another verse which is an unknown author. I've tried for several years trying to find out who the author of this verse is. We found it in Bengali script at the Govardhan Hill at the Chaitanya Math here in Mayapur. So perhaps it was written by some Gaudiya Math devotee. It's a very famous verse though amongst the devotees. Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Sesha Klesha Nasaya Paramanam Dadayane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the King of Hills, whose name is Govardhan. He destroys unlimited miseries and bestows the highest bliss. In the Garga Samhita, there's a verse which Krishna speaks to Nanda Maharaj. When Nanda Maharaj asked Krishna told him we should worship Govardhan Hill. And Nanda said, well, what verse should we use? And Krishna spoke this verse. Namo Brindavanankaya Tubhyam Goloka Molane Purna Brahmata Patraya Namo Govardhanaya Cha. In our magazine on Govardhan, we gave 4 different translations for this verse. I'm just going to give one right now. Obeisances to you, O Govardhan, who is our support and nourishment. Obeisances to you, the crown of Golok. And obeisances to you, O umbrella of Purna Brahma, Sri Krishna. Vanchakalpadarubhischa Kripasindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So some years ago we produced a magazine called Haridasa Varyo, Govardhan Hill, the best of devotees. And the heart of that magazine was an article based on a lecture of our Guru Maharaj, in which he concluded by stating, Giriraj is a manifestation of Krishna, but we accept him as a dear devotee and we worship him as a dear devotee, Haridasa Varya. Mahaprabhu has said that Giriraj Govardhan is Haridasa Varya. He's one of the chief devotees of Lord Hari. So, this sounds rather confusing. Is he Krishna? Is he a devotee? Will the really Giriraj please stand up? So we'd like to briefly examine this a little bit. In our magazine, we elaborately discuss this in one article, a 20-page article, but actually throughout the entire magazine, there's discussion about this particular topic. So it's confusing because in many places in Shastra and our acharyas, they've described that Giriraj is directly Krishna. It's said in Garga Samhita, Girirajo Hare Rupam Shriman Govardhano Girihi. That Giriraj is a personified form of Krishna. Jiva Goswami in his Priti Sandarbha, he quotes from Skanda Purana, Govardhanascha Bhagavan Yatcha Govardhano Dhrita Rakshita Yadava Sarve Indra Brishti Nivaranat. Which he describes that Govardhanascha Bhagavan, the Govardhan Hill is Bhagavan. He's directly God himself. And in this place, in Rajasthan, he manifested himself as a hill, and he held himself up and rescued all the different cowherd boys. Also Narayan Bhatta Goswami, we were just quoting a verse from him. He speaks about Giriraj Govardhan, and he says that Esha Govardhana Sakshat Krishna Eva Nasangsaya, that Nasangsaya, don't have any doubt. Esha Govardhana Sakshat Krishna, that Giriraj Govardhan is directly Krishna. Of this, there's no doubt. And some people say that Narayan Bhatta Goswami was a disciple of Krishnadas Brahmachari, who in turn was a disciple of Sanatana Goswami, and he was later in charge of the worship of Madan Mohan, the deity of Sanatana Goswami. He's a very famous personality. He wrote a book called Braj Bhakti Vilas, which is considered to be, at least at that time, the most complete compilation of places in Braj. And he revealed many, many different places around Braj, including Barsana and Unchagaon and many, many different places. So, what are the different conceptions of Giriraj Govardhan? It shouldn't be too surprising to us that Giriraj is understood in different ways. Don't try to limit him and insist, oh, he has to be like this, because as individuals, we ourselves are far more complex than that. Everybody has different relationships with different persons, and everyone is known by different persons in different ways. Someone may be the boss at the office, and they may be very heavy on the workers, and they think he's like a tyrant, and they hate him. But that same tyrant, when he goes home from work, his little boy rides him like a horse. And he thinks that daddy's very sweet. And then he has a wife, and he has a mother, and he has so many different friends who all see them in a little different way. And what to speak of Bhagavan? And therefore Krishna, he's described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Jai Rupa Chinche Dasi Se Rupa Hoy, that so many different people conceive him in so many different ways. So we shouldn't be disturbed by that. We shouldn't be surprised by that. Rather, we should expect that. Vishnu Sahasranam, that there's thousands of names of the Lord, and each one of those names evokes a different particular mood of a particular devotee for the Lord. And you can't say that one is correct and one is incorrect. But we would like to understand what is the conception of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the six Goswamis. So, in our approach to that today, we want to discuss a number of different conceptions of Giriraj Govardhan. In Braj, the Braj Basis, generally they address Giriraj as Baba. Baba means a father or like Guru. And there's a long tradition on the day of Guru Purnima, when the residents of Braj, they all come, and hundreds and thousands of people come, and they do Govardhan Parikrama on that day. Now some suggest that this is out of respect for Sanatana Goswami, whose disappearance day is on that date. But that doesn't make much sense to me. We did some research on this, and we found that amongst the modern day Brijbasis, very few of them even know anything about Sanatana Goswami. But that's the day, that Purnima day, Guru Purnima day, when everyone goes to do Govardhan Parikrama. And according to the Brijbasis, they do so because they see Giriraj as Baba. Baba means that personality who's a loving father and who maintains all the Brijbasis like a loving father. In his Artha Darshani commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the purport of Krishna's meaning, Krishna's words to his father Nanda Maharaj. He says, Kinchaga vadayeti iti govardhana iti vyutpate yatha yatyenaiva anubam anubayamanat gavam brittir govardhana dinaivate govardhanas chapuja ityaha niti dvabhyam pura patanani janapada deshaha kintu godana charakatvat vanokasa. He said, my dear father, we speak about this word Govardhan, and that means Vardayeti iti Govardhan. That means that personality who nourishes the cows. And that's the real meaning of Giriraj. He says, because we're all dependent on Govardhan Hill, and therefore we should worship Govardhan Hill and not anybody else. Forget about this Indra who's so proud, thinking he's like the temple president of the universe and such a big person. Rupa Goswami in Stavamala also addresses Krishna as the word Tata, which means father. There's a famous car, Tata, famous car company, Tata, means father. And so to this day, the Brijbasis, they consider Giriraj to be Tata. What is the conception of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That can be a little confusing. Many times when devotees speak about the identity of Giriraj Govardhan, they quote a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita along with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's purport as the conclusive answer to the identity of Govardhan Hill. And if we want to have this discussion today and try to understand what is the identity of Giriraj, we have to go through this verse. It's very important. Mahaprabhu instructed Raghunath Das Goswami, Prabhu kahe e Shila Krishnera Vigraha. He said, this stone, e Shila Krishnera Vigraha, this is the divine form of Krishna. Inhara seva koro tumi koriya agraha. You should worship with great eagerness this stone. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anabhashya that in the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Govardhan Shila, the stone from Govardhan Hill, was directly the form of Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. The Lord used the stone for 3 years, and then in the heart of Raghunath Das, the Lord awakened devotional service to the stone. The Lord then gave the stone to Raghunath Das, accepting him as one of his most confidential servants. So from this verse and purport, it's very clear that Mahaprabhu clearly saw Giriraj as Krishna. But that's not the only way that our acharyas describe that Mahaprabhu saw Giriraj. In the Chaitanya Charit by Srila Murari Gupta, one of the early biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a Sanskrit description of the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, it describes Mahaprabhu's words when he went to Vrindavan and he first saw Govardhan Hill. Danyoyam Giriraja eva jagati Shri Krishna Ramo Muda Yatra Kridata eva santatam maho gopala balai saha evam japati prema purna rasada Shri Gaura Chandra Swayam Shri Govardhana eva sagraham apita pujayan richati. He describes that out of all the universe, this Giriraj Govardhan, he's the best of devotees. He's the best of the bhaktas. And this is a similar verse that we find in the Venu Gita of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. in chapter 21, toward the end of the chapter, it's said, the Hantaya Madhura Bala Haridasa Varyo, that Giriraj Govardhan is the best of devotees. And this same verse was quoted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri when he saw Chatak Parvat as Govardhan. And Mahaprabhu began speaking of Giriraj as the best of devotees. So if we want to champion the idea that Giriraj is exclusively Krishna, and this is Mahaprabhu's conception based on this verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he says, Shila Krishna to Vigraha, that this Govardhan Shila is directly Krishna, or if we want to champion the other side, that he's definitely a devotee, we may get indigestion, and we'll probably have big quarrels with different devotees. We have to, if we're going to approach this topic, we have to consider both things. So, if we want to understand the conception of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we best understand that through the writings of our 6 Goswamis. And I think it's significant that Giriraj Govardhan, in the prayers of our 6 Goswamis, is only addressed. Just one second here. Oh, Krishna. The Giriraj Govardhan is only addressed as a devotee. So our Facebook, when I started this morning, for some reason it didn't go to our default settings, and it just had a private version of this. So I'll post this on Facebook later with a complete discussion, but I'm not going to go over it again now. We'll go back and look a little bit of what we just discussed. Is Giriraj a devotee? Is Giriraj Krishna? In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu says, Shila Krishna to Vigraha, this stone is a form of Krishna. And some devotees, they cite that in Prabhupada's purport, that this stone from Govardhan Hill is directly the form of Krishna as the conclusion. But we're not completely satisfied with that, and therefore we cited a verse from Murari Gupta's Chaitanya Charit in which Mahaprabhu praised the Giriraj as a devotee. Again, this is our discussion today, trying to understand the ontological position of Giriraj. Is he a devotee or is he Krishna? And similarly, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu, when he saw Chatak Parvat in Jagannath Puri, he quoted a verse, the 18th verse of the 21st chapter of the Venu Gita, the 10th canto, which describes Giriraj as Haridasa Varyo, as the best of devotees. So we may become confused by that. Is Giriraj a devotee? Is Giriraj Krishna? And as we mentioned a moment ago, some people may want to champion the idea that he's a devotee based on certain statements, which we just quoted, and others may want to champion Giriraj as Krishna based on other statements. But we won't be satisfied unless we make a synthesis of both types of statements. So let's go a little further in our discussion. Looking back in some of what we were discussing before we went live for everybody here in this talk today, we presented how sometimes our acharyas have discussed Giriraj as Baba. And sometime in the Brijbasis, they consider Giriraj as Baba. They worship him in that way. However, in the prayers to Giriraj, composed by our 6 Goswamis and other acharyas in their line like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Giriraj is exclusively presented as Haridasa Varyo, as the greatest of devotees. And there are many different prayers to Giriraj. Rupa Goswami's written 2 prayers to Giriraj Govardhan, so is Raghunath Das Goswami. And in all their prayers, they exclusively describe Giriraj as a devotee. Rupa Goswami, in his Pratama Govardhan Ashtaka, he says, Brindaya Varayam Vanitam Aste Haridasyam, that, O Giriraj, the goddesses of Braj, the gopis, they've described you as Haridasavarya, or the greatest of devotees. He describes, Rupa Goswami describes Giriraj as Krishnam Bodha Preshta, the dear friend of Krishna, as Te Hridayesha, or the Lord of Giriraj's heart. That's how he describes Krishna. Krishna is the Lord of Giriraj's heart, and Giriraj is a dear friend of Krishna. So he's making some distinction. Many, many different places. I won't go over all these descriptions right now. It would take us a long time. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, though, he describes Giriraj as the greatest of devotees. Rupa Goswami in his Vrindavan Astakam, he describes again Giriraj as the greatest of devotees. In his Govardhan Astakam, Rupa Goswami describes a little different thing, which is confusing also for devotees, because the Bhagavatam describes, Krishna says, Sailosmi, I am the mountain. That's me, Sailosmi. So that sounds very clear again, that Giriraj Govardhan is Krishna. And Rupa Goswami, in his text 3 of his Govardhan Ashtakam, he describes how Krishna manifested a form that was like Govardhan. He doesn't say that he's directly Govardhan, but he says that he manifested a form that was similar to Govardhan. Similarly, in his Braj Vilas Stava, Raghunath Das Goswami, he says, Brajendavaryarpita bogamuchaya dritva brihatkayam agara ukka varena radham chalayan vibhumte yatrana kutam taraham prapadye. He says that Nanda Maharaj offered a large quantity of food to Giriraj Govardhan. And at that time, Krishna manifested this gigantic form, and he ate all that food, and he deceived even Radharani by eating all that food. So this sounds very clear here, that Krishna manifested this gigantic form. But as we were having a discussion with one sannyasi actually this morning, was asking, did Krishna manifest the form of a mountain, or did he manifest a human-like form? What was that form, that giant form? It doesn't exactly say. All that's said is that it was a gigantic form. And then Krishna asked everybody, invited everyone, now you can ask for any benedictions that you want from me. But it's clear, if you think about it, that Krishna didn't manifest the form of a mountain, because there was already a mountain there. So what is it going to be, two mountains there, and then one of the mountains starts talking to you? It doesn't make any sense. It must have been a human-like form. The Bhagavatam, when it speaks about this, it describes that the purpose of this form was Gopa Vishrambanam, to generate faith in the cowherd people. And Sanatana Goswami explains this further in his Krishna Lila Stava. He says there, Proktadri go makka vide yagya doto pahara bhuk gopa vishva shanaradri chala stulyana rupa drik. That, oh Krishna, he's glorifying Krishna, you described how the sacrifice for Govardhan Hill and how the cows should be done. And when the sacrifice was performed, you assumed a separate gigantic form. He makes the point very clearly, a separate gigantic form, Stula Rup, and you declared that you are Govardhan Hill. So it's clear that the form he manifested was separate from the form of Giriraj, and Giriraj was present there as a silent witness. Similarly, Jiva Goswami, in his Krishna Sandarbha, he explains that Krishna, when he plays the role of a human being, he offers respects to his devotees like Shiva, Narada, and others. He says there, Shri Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, api yata govardhana maka lilayam Shri Gopa Gana Vishmapana kotakaya kaschan nijam dibya murtim pradarsayantai samam atmaivatmanam namaschakre. That Krishna, although he says Sri Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, he's the original personality of Godhead, for the purpose of Sri Gopagana Vismarpana, to bewilder the residents of Braj Bhumi during the Govardhan Leela, he manifested an expansion of his own transcendental form, And then along with the residents of Braj, he offered obeisances to that form. Huh? How do we understand that? Jiva Goswami goes on to explain. Taduktam tasmai namo braja janai sahachakra atmanatmane itivat tatrapi vavanda atmanam anantam achyutta iti. That when Krishna offered obeisances to his expansion during his worship of Govardhan Hill, Krishna said that, accompanied by the residents of Braj Bhumi, I offer my respectful obeisances to myself, the Supreme Person. So, it's not such a simplistic thing. Sometimes we want things just very, very black and white and very simple. It's like this, you should do like this. And for that reason, sometimes we have institutions, we have temple presidents in GBC, and we go to them and say, how should I think? But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his writings, in one article he made on the nature of the Bhagavat, he said, that's not bhakti. It's not just that you repeat in a mechanical way what you've heard, but bhakti means we should learn to think. But we think according to Shastra. And we think and we confirm things with the Vaishnavas by Sadhu Guru. But we should think. He says that the student is not meant to just keep something in a one-dimensional way. Rather, he should reflect those ideas, those thoughts, and he should come out himself. Now, one important way to understand a person's nature or their position is to hear something, learn something about their origins. So there's a number of stories about the origin of Giriraj Govardhan, and we did research on this for over 20 years, and we found a number of different discussions about it, some of which are a little famous and some of which are practically unknown. So probably the most famous account comes from the Garga Samhita, where it says that Giriraj was born from the wife of Mount Drona, who's the king of the Himalayan mountains, and that later on the sage Palasya Muni came and said, look, Drona, you're the king. You've got to give me some benediction. Drona said, what do you want? And he said, I want to take your son, Giriraj, to Kashi. And Drona agreed, very reluctantly, crying. And Giriraj also agreed, but Giriraj had one condition. He said, okay, you can pick me up and you can take me over, but wherever you put me down, I'm going to stay there. And so then when the sage was flying through the air, it's amazing to me that everybody's impressed with Krishna, that he held up Govardhan Hill for 7 days with one hand. But here we hear about Palasya Muni. He was flying through the air with Giriraj Govardhan. And this is Krishna's nature. He likes to see his devotees glorified even more than himself. So anyway, back to this story. When Palasya Muni was carrying Giriraj Govardhan to go to Kashi, because Kashi is a very flat place, and Palasya Muni said it's really boring there, we want to have a mountain, there's no scenery there. So Drona agreed and Giriraj agreed. But Giriraj said, look, wherever you put me down, I'm going to stay there. So while Palasya Muni was flying through the air with Giriraj in his hand, they came over Braj. And Giriraj said, wow, this is where I want to stay. And so Giriraj, by his mystic potency, he induced that rishi that he had to have a call of nature. And so that rishi, not thinking about it, being bewildered by Giriraj, he put Giriraj down, went and did his business, took bath, and he came back. But when he came back to pick up Giriraj again, he found that Giriraj was fixed on the ground. And he became very angry. And he said, look, you got to come. And Giriraj says, it's not my fault. You agreed that wherever you put me down, I'll stay there. You put me down here. So then Palasya Muni cursed him, that I curse you, you're so proud, you're going to shrink the size of a mustard seed every day. And that's another big topic. We wrote an article about Giriraj's shrinking, because he's been shrinking faster than one mustard seed a day. And there's different explanations about that. I won't go in that direction right now either, but it's another topic. There's a second version, popular version, of how Giriraj came to Braj, and that, in our research, we found the first place that it appeared was in Narayan Bhatta Goswami's book, Braj Bhakti Vilas, which we spoke about a little earlier if you hear the recording, for those of you who are live. Therein he described how in Treta Yuga, when all the Vanaras, the monkeys, were helping Lord Ramachandra build a bridge to Lanka, At that time, Hanuman went to the Himalayas, and the rest of the monkeys were picking up stones and putting, and Hanuman said, the heck with this stone business, I'm going to pick up a mountain. And he picked up Giriraj Govardhan. And he started flying through the air. Again, Krishna's devotee does something greater than Krishna himself. He's flying through the air, and while he's flying through the air, there was an email message or some kind of Akashvani or something. It told him the bridge is finished, and it's not necessary for the mountain. So then Hanuman, he patted Giriraj on the back and said, thank you very much, but you're not needed. And he put him down on the ground. And Giriraj said, hey, this is not fair. I was going to get the opportunity to have the Lord's feet put on me. This is in Treta Yuga. And then at that time, Hanuman said, don't worry, I bless you that Krishna will walk on you in Dwarpar Yuga. So then there's another, these are a few different accounts. Another story of the origin of Giriraj we find in the 80th chapter of the Padma Purana. And in the Padma Purana, there's a conversation between Narad Muni and Brinda Devi. And Narad Muni describes their Kolpe Paratane in a previous ancient age, which gives us a clue that probably this story, one reason maybe we don't hear it so often from our acharyas, is because it's in a different yuga, a different kolpa. He says, Kolpe Paratane, in a previous age, there was a Brahman whose name was Govardhan. And that devotee, that Brahman named Govardhan, he was a great devotee of Krishna, and he was worshipping the Lord, and Vishnu personally appeared before him and said, what do you want? I want to give you a blessing. And so that Brahman said, look, you really want to give me a blessing, you should stand on me. Step on my back and stand on me. So according to Padma Purana, that Brahman received Sarupya Mukti, and he got a spiritual form like Krishna as this Govardhan Hill. And then understanding that Brahman was a little hungry and thirsty, Krishna, who's Brahmanya Devai, who's the Devata of the Brahmins and who cares so much for the Brahmins, he arranged for a festival called Anakut to feed that Brahman. And then the Lord, seeing that Brahman was also thirsty, then he made some arrangement for there to be a heavy rain shower so that he'd have something to drink. This is described in the Padma Purana as Kolpe Paratane. Then there's another description cited by some of our Goswamis, our present Goswamis in Vrindavan, from a book called the Maheshwar Tantra. And according to that Maheshwar Tantra, Narad Muni once, he was given a jeweled necklace from Parvati, Lord Shiva's wife. And he dropped that jeweled necklace on the ground, and when it landed, that necklace manifested the form of Giriraj. Now I have to give a little footnote here, that in our research we managed to acquire a Sanskrit copy of that Maheshwar Tantra, and we had several scholarly persons go through the complete book, and there's no mention in that version of Maheshwar Tantra that we found of this particular story. But still, this is a popular story that's there in Vrindavan today. It's told by some of the Goswamis from Radharaman. But one thing, all these previous stories that we just mentioned, none of them speak about the primal origins of Giriraj Govardhan. All of them describe Giriraj directly or indirectly as existing previous to the time that he was brought to Braj. In the Garga Samhita, how we are reading, how it said that the wife of Drona, and I'm sorry for those of you who like to have some respect to ladies, I also like that. Her name's not mentioned, just that she's the wife of Drona. The Giriraj was born from her. But that's not the primal, the Genesis we say in English. The word Genesis is the first book of the Bible, but Genesis also means the primal origin of someone. That's not the Genesis of Giriraj. So the only two explanations that we've found that speak about this Genesis of Giriraj are in another section of Garga Samhita and in the Bhavishya Purana, in the Patisarga Parva. So let's look at those briefly. In the Bhavishya Purana, it tells a little unusual story about how Radha and Krishna performed severe penances for 1,000 years. That, to begin with, that's a little strange. We don't generally hear about Radha and Krishna doing penances and austerities. But anyway, according to the Bhavishya Purana, after they did this austerities, a brilliant effulgence came from their bodies. And from that effulgence, all of Braj Mandala was produced. And mark it, it's interesting, 21 different energies came from different locations in their bodies. 10 energies were produced from their 5 working senses, their panchakarmendriya, and from their 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, their panchagyanendriya. And these energies, they turned into the 10 villages known as Gokul, Barsana, Nandagaon, Bandira, Mathura, Braj, Jamuna, Manya, Shayaska, and Gopika. Then there were 10 energies that were born from the 5 objects of the senses, Panchatanmatra, and the 5 elements within their bodies, earth, water, fire, etc. Those are the Panchabhotikas. And those 10 energies turned into the 10 forests, Vrindavan, Gopavan, Bahulavan, Madhishringa, Kunjavan, Dadivan, Rahadvan, Kridavan, Venavan, and Padmavan. These 10 forests are a little different description in the Bhavishya Purana than the general description that we get. And then, so that's 20. Then it said in the Bhavishya Purana, Manasa Prakritir Jato Girir Govardhano Mahan Dibyam Vrindavanam Dristva Paramanandam Apasa. That from the minds of both Radha and Krishna was born Giriraj Govardhan. And when Giriraj Govardhan came out, and Dibyam Vrindavanam Dristva, he saw Vrindavan, Braj Mandala. At that time, Paramanandam Apisa, Giriraj felt really happy. This is good. I'm happy. Very nice thing. This is one description of the primal origin of Giriraj. It's interesting if we consider this description. Jiva Goswami in his Tattva Sandarbha says that when we look at the Vedic literature, sometimes there's different descriptions given. To give you a very gross example, in the Linga Purana, it said that Vishnu doesn't exist, but he's a dream of Lord Shiva. So, boy, you get a big headache if you try to understand that. And Linga Purana is a bona fide Purana, or Goswami sometimes quote it. But Jiva Goswami says that different descriptions are given in those Puranas to give faith to persons who have different natures. So this Bhavishya Purana gives a little bit of an unusual story, and if we consider it, it's really speaking about that process wherein we try to understand the nature of matter and spirit by, excuse me? What is it called? What's the word? Sankhya, thank you very much. I was looking for that word. It was escaping my mind. Krishna couldn't remind me. To the process of Sankhya. So this is all pure Sankhya philosophy given here. And a little bit of Rasik something is coming, Giriraj is coming from the minds of Radha Krishna. Now, in the Garga Samhita, in the 3rd canto, chapter 9, it describes that on one occasion, Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Ras Leela. And Krishna, who promises in the Gita, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham, that I always reciprocate with my devotees. Krishna, being pleased with their love and their dance at that time, he offered them a boon. And at that time, not just any of the gopis, but Srimati Radharani personally said, Yadi rase prasano si mama premna jagat pate tadaham pratanam tvam tu karomi manasi stitam. She said, my dear Lord, you're Jagat Pate, you're the Lord of the worlds. Si mama premna, if you're pleased, Jadi rasi prasanas, if you're pleased with my love in this rasa dance, then I have this desire that I'd like to place before you. And Krishna said, Tatastu, whatever you want, Radharani, I'll give. And then Radharani said, Vrindavane dibya nukunja parsve, Krishna tate rasa rasaya yogyam, Rahastalam tvam kurutan manodyam manodato yam mama deva devaha. Srimati Radharani, she said at that time that here in the Vrindavan forest, in a secluded place, I would like you to make Rasa Rasaya Yogyam, you make a place where we can perform the Ras Leela. This is my desire. And Krishna said, Tatastu. So try to understand Radharani's desire. Radharani simply lives for the pleasure of Krishna. And understanding that this Ras Leela gave Krishna so much pleasure, Radharani said, this is what I want. This is what I want for Christmas. This is what I want for my birthday. I don't need any toys or anything. I want a place to please you. I want an arena for our Ras Leela. Krishna said, Tatastu, so be it. And then the 33rd verse of that 9th chapter of the 3rd canto of Garga Samhita describes, very interesting verse, Tadaiva Krishna Hridaya Gopi Vyuhasya Pashyata Nirgatam Sat Jalam Tejo Anuragashyeva Chankuram. At that time, while Krishna was looking on at the gopis, or while the gopis, Vyuha means like an army, Gopi Vyuhasya Pashyata, while the gopis were watching, and this is significant, while the gopis, they were the witness of this, Nirgatam Sajalam Tejo, Anuragasheva Chankram, from Krishna Hridayat, from the heart of Krishna, came this Anuraga Chank Anka, or the seed of Anurag, the seed of love. It was Krishna's personified love. And that personified love of Krishna fell down there in the place of the Ras Leela. And it started growing into a great mountain. And the Garga Samhita says that it was growing and growing, and he became 180 million miles high. And at that time, as he was expanding so much, everybody in Braj became a little nervous. We're going to get squished. This mountain's going to step on me. And Krishna stood up and slapped the mountain. Said, hey, what are you doing, Badmas rascal? Stop this right now. And then Radharani, looking at that mountain, she became very, very pleased. And she performed pastimes with Giriraj. So this is the ontological genesis of Giriraj. Krishna performed Ras Leela with the gopis. Being pleased with their love for him at that time, Krishna asked the gopis, what would you like? Not just any of the gopis, but Srimati Radharani stated that I would like there to be a place for the Ras Leela. At that time, Krishna's personified love, for who? Well, it's in response to Radharani. Krishna's personified love for Radha came out of the heart of Krishna. And his love is amazing. It's so big. It started growing and expanding. It was going to cover the whole universe. He has unlimited love for Radha. And Krishna slapped that mountain. Stop it. You're scaring everybody. Don't do that. So both the Bhavishya Purana and the Garga Samhita support the idea that Giriraj is Vishnu Tattva. That he's a manifestation of Krishna, but he's in the mood of a devotee. And our 6 Goswamis, they describe Giriraj continually as a devotee, although he's also described here as Vishnu Tattva. But worshiping, we can worship the Lord. Sometimes he comes in the mood of a devotee, just as Krishna himself comes in the mood of Chaitanya, comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Balaram and Lakshman, Advaita Charya, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, Ananta Sesh, Lord Sankarshan. These are all Vishnu Tattva. These are all manifestations of Bhagavan, but they've all come in the mood of a devotee. And therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Avatara Ganera Bhakta Bhave Adhikar, Bhakta Bhava Hoite Adhika Shuka Nahi Ar. That all the incarnations of the Lord, they have the Adhikar, they have the right to Bhakta Bhava Hoiti Adhika, they have a right to understand the emotions of the devotees. And he says, Ar Sukha Nahiyar, there's no higher happiness than understanding that. And moreover, there's more mercy in worshiping the Lord as a devotee. We can worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, my Guru said, with a peacock feather, no problem. He's Krishna. You could also put a flute in his hand, no problem. But he's Mahavadanyaya Avatar. He's more merciful when we worship him as a devotee. So we can also worship Giriraj Govardhan with a flute and a peacock feather, no problem. And some Vaishnavas do like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because Girirajo Hare Rupam Shriman Govardhano Girihi. He's directly Krishna. But there's a reason why our 6 Goswamis have described it's better to worship him as a devotee. There's a reason why in the Venu Geet The gopis describe Hantaya Madhura Bala Haridasa Varyo, that Giriraj is the best of devotees. And Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, in his Govardhan Basa Prarthana Dasakam, and his prayers to Giriraj, in the 8th verse, he describes there, Girinipa Haridasa Shreni Varyati Namam Ritamuditamitam Shri Radhika Vaktra Chandrat Brajanavatilakatve Klipta Vedai Sputam Me Nija Nikata Nibasam Dehi Govardhanatvam. He says there that Giriraj, he's the best of devotees, and he says we have proof of this because Shri Radhika Vakta Chandrat. This statement, Hantaya Madhura Bala Haridasa Varyo, the 18th verse of the 21st chapter, the 10th canto of the Venu Gita, he says this verse was spoken by Radharani. And this verse says, Hantaya Madhura Abala Haridasa Varyo. Abala means, my dear gopis, you're not Bala. Bala means strong. They're Abala. They're girls. My dear gopis. This Giriraj Govardhan is Haridasa Varyo. He's the best of the devotees. Similarly, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in the last verse of his Govardhan Ashtakam, he gives us a very clear understanding of why it's better to worship Giriraj as a devotee. He says, Vina bhavet kim haridasa varya padashrayam bhaktiratashayami yameva swaprema najasayo shri govardhano me dishatam abhishtam. He says, Vina bhavet kim haridasa varya. Without, Vina means without. Unless you take shelter of Giriraj as Haridasa Varya, as the best of devotees, then you can't get that Yameva Swaprema, the love that he himself has. Wait a minute, this is a far out thing. The love that Giriraj has? What is the love that Giriraj has? He says, therefore I'm praying to Giriraj, Govardhano me dishatam abhishtam, you please grant my desire. Why is it that the worship of Giriraj is so important amongst our Goswamis? Why is it that Raghunath Das Goswami, who's our Prayojanacharya, he's worshipping Giriraj and he speaks about him as a devotee? Even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him that when you have this stone, you should worship him. He's Sakshat Krishna. But then Raghunath Das Goswami, in all of his prayers, he speaks of Giriraj as a devotee. Is he disobeying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? No, Mahaprabhu has different moods at different times to Giriraj. Sometimes he sees him as Krishna, sometimes he sees him as a devotee. Why those two differences are there, I'm not going to try to discuss that today. It's a very, very subtle postgraduate discussion. But this topic is there in our magazine. We wrote something about it. Why do our Goswamis feel this way, though? What is the ontological position of Giriraj? We understand from from both the Garga Samhita and the story we told from the Bhavishya Purana, that Krishna is a direct manifestation Giriraj is a direct manifestation from Krishna. That means that Giriraj is Vishnu Tattva. According to the Bhavishya Purana, he comes from the mind of both Radha and Krishna. So Radharani is also there. And the Garga Samhita is even more clear that Giriraj is Krishna's personified love for Radha, manifests according to the request of Radharani to make a place for the Ras Leela, which means Radharani's desire to serve Krishna. So Krishna, seeing Radharani's desire to serve him, his personified love came out of his heart and manifested as a place to bring Radha and Krishna together. What is the mood to bring Radha and Krishna together? We call that Manjari Bhav. And our 6 Goswamis are all Sakhi Manjaris. And therefore, in their prayers to Giriraj, they continually speak about him. The best thing is as a devotee. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes so far as to say, unless you worship him as a devotee, Vinabhavet Kim Haridasa Varya, you can't get the love that he has. What is the love that he has? He's Vishnu Tattva, he's Krishna himself, but he has this love for Radharani. He has this love to bring Radha and Krishna together. This is the position of Giriraj. This is the identity of Giriraj. Giriraj Govardhan is Krishna's personified love for Radha, manifested to bring Radha and Krishna together in the form of a place to perform the Ras Leela. And so this is a synthesis of both these things. And as we began in our discussion, which I'm sorry wasn't live, but it was recorded, and if you watch the video again, I think you'll see it there. We began by discussing this point, which our revered spiritual master, Sri Srimad Gaur Govinda Maharaj, stated, that Giriraj is a manifestation of Krishna, but we accept him as a dear devotee, and we worship him as a dear devotee, Haridasa Varyo. Mahaprabhu has said that Giri Govardhan is Haridasa Varyo, one of the chief devotees of Lord Hari. So in this discussion today now, we've tried to reconcile both of these conceptions. How Giriraj is a manifestation of Krishna, but we accept him as a dear devotee and we worship him as a dear devotee. By going through these different descriptions of the genesis, of the origin of Giriraj, as found in the Bhavishya Purana and especially the Garga Samhita, we find a synthesis of both these things. That Giriraj Govardhan is Vishnu Tattva, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught us the best worship of him. Our Goswamis have taught us the best worship of him is as a devotee. Because in the words of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Vina bhavet kim haridasa varya. Unless you worship him as a devotee, you can't get that swaprema. That swaprema, which means that manjari bhav. And therefore, Giriraj Govardhan is the deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the only deity that was directly given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the Goswamis. Giriraj Govardhan is so very, very important because this Giriraj Govardhan is worshipped in Manjari Bhav. So we're going to stop there. I want to thank Sanjay, who's been taking part in the discussion, and as well as Natalia and Sadhu Marg Prabhu, as well as Natalia and Subal Sham Prabhu and Leela Avatar Mataji and others. If anybody has any other reflections, Sadhu Marg Prabhu has said, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to hear pure Krishna Katha. We're just a pipe. We're not the source of the water. But we want to be honest and we want to just let that Katha come through us the best way we can. Ramana Sukha Prabhu, Prabhupada's disciple, my pranams to you, Prabhuji. He says, according to the mood of the caretaker of Giriraj, is it possible to hold both conceptions of Giriraj simultaneously, sometimes as Krishna and sometimes as a devotee? Why not? Why not? And I know some Vaishnavas, I know one Vaishnava in Gaudiya Math who was a servant of one big acharya there, and he had two Govardhan Shilas, and one he worshipped as Krishna, and one he worshipped as a devotee. But there's a difference in the worship. When we worship Giriraj as Krishna, that's Haridev. And as Haridev, he gives a certain thing. He gives us Brij Bas, he gives us residence in Vrindavan. And that's a very wonderful thing. But when we worship him as Haridas, as a devotee, as Haridas and Haridev, if we worship him as Haridev, he gives residence in Vrindavan. If we worship him as Haridas, then he gives Manjari Bhav. Giridhari Prabhu said, why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't allow us to climb Giriraj. Well, that's an interesting discussion. We wrote an elaborate article about this in the discussion about Chatak Parvat in Jagannath Puri. Because although when Mahaprabhu went to Vrindavan, he wouldn't walk on Govardhan Hill. And although he told Jagadananda Pandit, when you go to Vrindavan, don't walk on Govardhan Hill. When Mahaprabhu was in Puri and he saw Chatak Parvat and he was completely bewildered, he thought this is Govardhan Hill. He walked on it. So why is that? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta goes further in one article that he gave, one lecture he gave, which is later compiled in Bengali in an article which we translated and put in that magazine, some excerpts from it in our article. He said not only did Mahaprabhu walk on Govardhan in the form of Chatak Parvat, but also Madhavendra Puri walked on Govardhan Hill. And not just that, but Radharani walks on Govardhan Hill every day, and so do the gopis. If they don't do that, they can't meet with Krishna. So this is a very, very esoteric thing. Why is it that Radharani is walking on Govardhan Hill to meet with Krishna, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Radha Bhava Dyuti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Sarupam? He's in the mood of Radharani. When he goes to Braj, he doesn't walk on Govardhan Hill. It sounds contradictory. It sounds confusing. Well, Radharani has different moods. And according to Srila Rupa Goswami and Lalita Madhav, sometimes Radharani sees Giriraj as Krishna when she's feeling separation. In her mood of unmadana, of Madanakya Mahabhav, then Radharani, she sees Krishna everywhere. And she sees Giriraj Govardhan as Krishna. In the same mood of Madanakya Mahabhav, Mahaprabhu sees, sometimes in Vrindavan, he sees Giriraj as Krishna. He won't walk on him. But when he's in Puri, and he's in the mood of a Sakhi Manjari, or a person serving the Sakhi Manjaris, he sees Giriraj as a devotee. Ramana Sukaprabhu asked, did Prabhupada give any instructions on the worship of Giriraj? We wrote an article about that. We found several instructions that devotees got from Prabhupada. That's a long discussion. But Prabhupada gave some very simple instructions to, what's his name? Yashodanandan Swami. Prabhupada, someone gave him a Govardhan Shila, and he asked Prabhupada, what should I do? And Prabhupada said, you should worship him. And he said, how? And Prabhupada said, you should wipe him off with a towel and offer him some sandalwood paste and fruits and flowers. It was very, very simple. And he didn't give any specific instructions whether it should be as Krishna or as a devotee. And as far as I know, Prabhupada never gave any explicit instructions in that regard. Both are bona fide. It's nothing wrong with worshiping Giriraj as Krishna. Many Vaishnavas, they do that, and that's very wonderful. In any case, the way we worship the deity, because our mood in approaching the deity is, we have no adhikar for that. We worship the deity on the order of Guru. And however Gurudev tells us, we do that. So we should follow the instructions of our Guru Janas, how we should worship Giriraj Govardhan. So I'll stop there. Anandamayi Radha has another comment. She said, I want to ask why Raghunath Das wanted to come in Braj and climb Govardhan Hill and commit suicide there, and why he thought, even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never climbed in Govardhan. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gives a very, very esoteric, very, very elevated discussion about this. It would take me an hour or two to discuss this properly. He speaks about Acharya Das Abhiman and Bhakta Bhav, or two different moods. And Raghunath Das Goswami, wanting to serve, he having this Acharya Das Abhiman and wanting to serve the devotees, he wants to jump off Giriraj Govardhan. And because by jumping off Giriraj Govardhan, then he's thinking, then I'll be able to directly enter into the service of Rupa Goswami again. And Raghunath Das Goswami is wanting to commit suicide because he's lost their association. He's lost the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So even though Mahaprabhu said, don't climb on Giriraj, in a mood to serve, he's getting ready to climb on Govardhan Hill. In the mood to serve, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta established his temple on top of Govardhan Hill in Puri, in Chaktik Parvik. In the mood to serve, Madhavendra Puri walked on Govardhan Hill and established a temple there for all these different reasons. So I'm going to stop there. It's a little bit late. You have a quick reflection or something on a pine you want to share with us?
Something quick. I was thinking about this beautiful explanation how Giriraj is coming from as a personified love for Krishna's love to Radharani in the form of the hill, and how you explained that this difference between Giriraj as the Lord and as a devotee. And I was thinking about the last verse of the Madharashtaka, where it said that first of all I'm offering my obeisances to this effulgent robe, and as we know, this robe is personified love of Rajabasis to Krishna.
Some say it's actually from Radharani.
I see. So it's interesting for me. I was thinking about that. It's personified love, and we first of all offer obeisances to this, and here also that Giriraj is also personified love, but Krishna's love for Srimati Radharani, and we also first of all offer obeisances to this particular form.
In a similar way, Mother Yashoda, she puts Krishna down to go and offer respect to the devotee, the milk, who Sanatana Goswami said was going to commit suicide and jump out of the pot, was boiling over, because the milk saw that Krishna was breastfeeding from Mother Yashoda, and the milk thought, forget it, I can't compete with the breasts of Mother Yashoda. But to show us that the importance of the devotee and the service of the devotee, Mother Yashoda gave more stress on that milk service than on her own service. So we'll stop there. Bola Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Govardhan Puja ki. Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Vancha Kalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Bheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo